Part 1. The world bows to wealth. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. Niccolo Machiavelli. Let me ask you a brutal question. Have you ever noticed how the world suddenly changes when you have money? A man with nothing is invisible. His dreams are dismissed, his voice ignored, his kindness mistaken for weakness. But put money in his hand, and suddenly people listen, respect, even obey. The truth is simple and ruthless. The world doesn't care about your intentions. It bows to money. Society tells you a comforting lie. Money isn't everything. Happiness is free. You can't buy respect. Really? Try being broke. See how much respect you get then. Try asking for loyalty when you can't even provide stability. Try talking about freedom when your landlord owns the key to your front door. The harsh Machiavellian truth is this: poverty makes you a pawn. Without money, you don't get to play the game. You are the game. Let me give you a story. A friend of mine once worked in a company where he was brilliant, hardworking, and loyal. He believed that his effort alone would elevate him, but when promotions came around, they didn't choose him. They chose the mediocre man who had money outside of work, the one who could wine and dine executives, the one who didn't need the job. Why? Because money is leverage. The wealthy man's independence made him more desirable. He didn't beg, he didn't cling. And that confidence, funded by his wealth, made him appear stronger. My friend, despite his skill, was trapped. He couldn't risk leaving. He had bills, debts, obligations. His poverty made him dependent, and dependency is the opposite of power. That betrayal taught him, and it should teach you, that without money, talent and loyalty mean nothing. I used to believe I was above money, that true worth was about honesty, hard work, and principles. That if I was good enough, people would recognize it. But life slapped me awake. I saw doors closed not because I lacked talent, but because I lacked leverage. I saw people with less skill, but more money, command rooms I couldn't enter. And I realized something gut-wrenching. I wasn't playing the same game. I wasn't just behind. I wasn't even on the board. That day, I killed the illusion. I stopped pretending money didn't matter. And from that moment forward, I treated money not as comfort, but as a weapon. Think about it. Money is protection. With money, you don't beg for opportunities. You create them. You don't cling to toxic relationships. You walk away. You don't grovel before employers. You negotiate from strength. Money is armor. It shields you from the petty humiliations of dependency, but it's more than armor. Money is a sword. It buys you silence when you need it, influence when it matters, allies when you can't fight alone. And in Machiavelli's eyes, money was the truest fortress of all. Armies betray, allies defect, morality shifts. But wealth bends reality itself. Look closely at the poor man. Not his clothes, not his hunger. Look at his eyes. What do you see? Hesitation, fear, dependence. He cannot speak freely because his survival depends on others. He cannot act boldly because a single mistake could cost him everything. He cannot walk away because he has nowhere else to go. This is why poverty is not just economic. It is psychological slavery. And this is why Machiavelli would argue, if you want to be free, if you want to be sovereign, if you want to be untouchable, you must acquire money. So much money that no chain can bind you again. So here's the dilemma I put before you. Would you rather be good but powerless, admired for your principles while the world ignores you? Or would you rather acquire so much money that you can finally act without asking permission? Because let me tell you something uncomfortable. Those who claim money doesn't matter are usually the ones who don't have it. They disguise their weakness as virtue. They romanticize struggle because they have no choice. But the ones who rise, the ones who bend the world, they never apologize for wanting wealth. They hunt it, they acquire it, they use it, And because of that, they live free while the rest live chained. But let's pause. Money is power, yes, but it is also a trap. Because if you acquire wealth without understanding how to use it, you'll simply become a gilded prisoner, rich, but still enslaved to fear, vanity, and manipulation. The goal is not just to have money. The goal is to wield it with Machiavellian precision, to turn it into leverage, into strategy, into sovereignty. And that's where our journey takes us next. Here's the brutal truth. Without money, you are dependent, and the dependent man is never free. With money, you gain leverage, and leverage is power. So here's your first challenge. Stop treating money as comfort. Stop thinking of it as just enough. Start seeing money as a weapon, as armor, as the fortress that makes betrayal powerless. Because the world doesn't care about your dreams. But it bows always to wealth. And in Part 2, we'll tear apart the illusions about playing it safe and expose why conventional wisdom about money keeps you weak. Part 2, the illusion of safety. A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and to imitate those who have been supreme. Niccolo Machiavelli. We live in a world that sells comfort like it's freedom. Go to school, get a safe job, save a little each month. Retire someday, hopefully before your body breaks down. This is the dream they dangle in front of you, a leash disguised as a golden chain. And most people take it. They trade their vitality for predictability, their youth for wages, their ambition for security. But here's the Machiavellian truth. Security is the slowest form of slavery. From childhood, you're trained to believe safety is noble. Your parents, teachers, bosses, all telling you the same thing. Don't take too many risks. Play it safe. Be grateful for stability. And so you learn to shrink yourself, to avoid confrontation, to stay quiet when you should speak, to stay still when you should move. But here's the cost. The man who plays safe never wins big. He survives, barely, but he never dominates. He becomes predictable, dependent, and powerless. Machiavelli would spit on such a life. Because what use is a long, safe life lived in chains? Let me give you an example. A man I once knew worked in a safe government job. He was careful, cautious, never took risks. He saved diligently, lived modestly, and trusted the system. Everyone praised his discipline. But when crisis struck, an economic crash, his savings evaporated, his pension was cut, and his job security meant nothing. All his caution, all his obedience, all his safety became a coffin. Meanwhile, the bold men, the ones who took risks, acquired assets, built influence. They adapted. They thrived. They didn't beg for rescue because they didn't depend on anyone to save them. His safety wasn't safety at all. It was a trap. I'll admit it. I too once clung to safety. I thought having just enough would protect me. I thought being careful, being modest, would guarantee stability. But every time a problem came, I realized enough was never enough. A sudden bill, a betrayal, an unexpected crisis, and the fragile shield of safety shattered instantly. It was in those moments I realized Machiavelli's wisdom. Fortune does not protect the cautious. It devours them. Because the cautious build walls of paper and call it armor. The bold build fortresses of steel. Here's what safety thinking really does. It teaches you to live small. When you tell yourself you need just enough, your brain stops thinking expansively. You accept crumbs because you fear the banquet. You settle for mediocrity because you fear ambition. And when crisis comes, you panic because scarcity has made you fragile. This is why poverty and just enough thinking go hand in hand. Both keep you weak. Both keep you controllable. Both ensure you will never walk freely. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler should never depend on the goodwill of fortune because fortune is fickle. It raises men up only to destroy them when they grow complacent. The prince who relies on charity is doomed. The man who relies on safety is already half dead. Instead, Machiavelli urged rulers to build their own fortresses of power, not just walls of stone, but wealth, influence, and fearlessness. The same applies to you. Safety is not security. Real security is overwhelming power. So let me ask you, are you living safe? Or are you living sovereign? Do you cling to your paycheck, terrified of losing it? Do you hoard scraps, hoping it will be enough when crisis comes? Do you follow the rules, thinking obedience will save you? Or are you building so much wealth, so much leverage, that nothing can shake you? Because here's the hard truth: the safe man never rules. He is ruled, always. Look around you. The poor man cannot speak freely. His boss owns his voice. The poor man cannot love freely. His partner owns his dependence. The poor man cannot even think freely. His mind is chained to survival. This is why safety is dangerous. It gives you the illusion of freedom while binding you in invisible chains. And the day you finally need strength, you realize you don't have it. But here's the good news. Chains can be broken. Safety can be shattered. Not by comfort, not by waiting, but by fire. Because the man who steps into risk, into confrontation, into discomfort, he burns away the weakness that safety breeds. In part 3, we will step into that fire. We'll see why confrontation with loss, rejection, and failure is the forge that transforms money from comfort into power. And we'll ask the question, what would you dare to do if you had so much money that safety no longer mattered? Safety is not security. Caution is not strength. The man who plays small never breaks his chains. So here's your challenge. Stop aiming for enough. Stop bowing to the cult of safety. Start building not for survival, but for sovereignty. Because when crisis comes, and it will, safety will shatter, and only the bold, only the sovereign will still stand. And in part 3, we'll walk into the forge where weakness dies and true wealth becomes the weapon of the untouchable. Part 3. Fire and Fortune. Confrontation as currency. Fortune is a woman. It is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force. Niccolo Machiavelli. Fear chains the poor. Vanity enslaves the cautious. Safety blinds the obedient. So how do you kill weakness? By walking into fire. By confronting risk, rejection, and loss until they no longer hold power over you. Because here's the truth. Money does not just grow from comfort, it grows from risk. And those who refuse confrontation never hold enough of it to be free. Think of wealth not as numbers in a bank, but as scars. Each scar is a risk taken, a rejection endured, a failure survived. The entrepreneur who pitches 100 times and hears no 99 times. Each rejection is a scar, each scar a coin of wisdom. The investor who risks when others tremble. Each calculated risk becomes a fortress brick. The man who dares to lose again and again until loss itself no longer terrifies him. That man forges wealth that safety seekers can never imagine. Confrontation is not chaos. It is discipline. It is the forge where fortune is bent into submission. Let me tell you about two men. The first was cautious. He saved every penny, avoided risks, and clung to stability. His money grew slowly, then vanished in a crisis. His fortress of safety turned to dust because he had never tested its strength. The second was bold. He risked investments, faced rejection, endured ridicule. He lost big at times, yes, but he gained bigger. His scars became strategy, his losses became leverage, and in the end, he stood wealthier, freer, untouchable. The difference? The cautious man feared confrontation. The ruthless man embraced it. I once faced a financial betrayal that nearly destroyed me. A deal collapsed, trust shattered, and I was left bleeding, both in money and in pride. For weeks I wanted to hide, to cling to safety again. But I forced myself back into the fire. I confronted the rejection, endured the humiliation, took risks even when I felt broken. And slowly, I realized something. Money wasn't the true fortress. My willingness to confront loss was. Because once you face loss, it cannot control you. That's when I understood Machiavelli. Fortune does not favor the safe. It bows to the bold. Why does risk terrify most people? Because risk exposes truth. If you fail, you see your weakness. If you are rejected, you see your vanity. If you lose, you see your attachment. And people hate truth more than they hate poverty. So they cling to safety, disguise weakness as virtue, and call caution wisdom. But the Machiavellian man faces truth head on. He risks. He bleeds. He learns. He wins. Picture this. A man walks into a burning building, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. Inside, flames roar, walls collapse, smoke suffocates. Yet he walks calmly, eyes unflinching, pace steady. People outside scream, "You'll die! You'll lose everything!" But he keeps walking, and then he emerges, scarred, bruised, but holding treasure in his hands. The treasure that only the fire could reveal. Everyone watching falls silent, because they realize something chilling. This man is not afraid of loss. This man is not afraid of pain. This man is willing to risk everything, and therefore he can have anything. Now pause. Ask yourself, could you walk through that fire? Could you risk rejection, ridicule, loss, and keep walking? Or would you stay outside, safe but chained? Machiavelli taught rulers that war was not only fought with swords, but with resources. The prince who lacked wealth could never hold loyalty. The general who lacked supplies could never win battles. In the same way, your war, the modern war of life, business, and relationships, is fought with financial power. In negotiations, the one with options wins. In relationships, the one who can walk away holds control. In society, the one with resources bends rules others must obey. Confrontation with risk and rejection is not about money alone. It's about sovereignty. Wealth is the battlefield. Risk is the weapon. Confrontation is the training ground. So here's the dilemma for you. Would you rather risk and bleed for sovereignty, or cling to safety and stay chained? If you risk, you may lose. If you play safe, you've already lost, because the safe man never rules. He obeys, always. But even risk and wealth have limits. Yes, they give power. Yes, they free you from poverty and dependency. Yes, they bend others to your will. But what happens when someone threatens the very things you've built? What happens when they can still bribe, shame, or manipulate you because you're attached? That's where the ultimate weapon enters. Detachment, the crown of the untouchable. And in part 4, we step into the climax, where the man who owns wealth but clings to nothing becomes sovereign, feared and unforgettable. Risk is not danger, it is currency. Confrontation is not chaos, it is training. Loss is not the end, it is the forge of fortune. So here's your challenge. Step into fire this week. Take a risk that terrifies you. Confront rejection, endure loss, collect scars. Because every scar is wealth, and every risk survived is sovereignty earned. And in part 4, we'll crown the fearless man with the power that no one can take away. Detachment. Part 4. Detachment, the crown of the untouchable. The great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances as though they were realities, and are often more influenced by the things that seem than by those that are. Niccolò Machiavelli. We've torn down fear. We've exposed the illusion of safety. We've walked through fire, bled for wealth, and seen how confrontation transforms weakness into strength. Now we arrive at the most dangerous paradox of all, detachment. Because money without detachment is just another chain. The man who clings to wealth is still a slave. The man who worships riches is still weak. But the man who owns money, yet is not owned by it, that man is untouchable. History is full of rulers destroyed not by poverty, but by their love of riches. A king who built palaces of gold became predictable. His enemies knew his greed and used it against him. A general who clung to treasure betrayed his men when temptation came. A merchant who valued reputation above freedom bent to the crowd and lost everything when fortune turned. Wealth without detachment is fragility disguised as strength. Because if you fear losing money, you are still poor. Let me give you a story. In Renaissance Italy, a wealthy merchant was threatened by rivals. They tried to bribe him, to smear him, to ruin him. At one point, they even offered him more money to betray his own allies. But he laughed. "Gold means nothing to me if it costs me my sovereignty." That single act of detachment shattered their leverage. His rivals couldn't tempt him, couldn't shame him, couldn't buy him. He used wealth as a weapon, not as a leash. And because he was untouchable, his influence only grew. I'll confess, when I first started pursuing money ruthlessly, I became attached. I obsessed over numbers, tied my identity to income, measured my worth in digits. And every fluctuation in my wealth made me tremble. A small loss felt like death. A minor failure felt like humiliation. Then one day I realized this wasn't sovereignty. It was slavery in disguise. I was rich in numbers, but poor in freedom. It was only when I detached, when I saw money as a weapon, not a god, that I became stronger. The fear of loss died. The addiction to vanity died. The chains broke. Detachment is the ultimate fortress. If they threaten to take your money, you shrug, because you know you can rebuild. If they mock you, you endure, because reputation is a tool, not a master. If they try to bribe you, you laugh, because nothing they can offer owns you. If they threaten your safety, you face it, because you've already embraced risk and loss. What can the world do to a man who does not cling? Nothing. He has already confronted loss. He has already buried fear. He has already killed vanity. And because of that, he rules himself completely. This is where the Machiavellian game turns brutal. Your detachment terrifies others. The manipulator who cannot guilt you realizes his power is gone. The rival who cannot bribe you despairs. The critic who cannot shame you collapses into silence. Because your calmness exposes their chains. They see in you what they cannot be, and it burns them. Detachment makes you more than powerful. It makes you sovereign. Detachment creates another weapon, absence. When you can walk away from deals, from relationships, from battles, you terrify those who depend on your presence. Absence magnifies your value. Your silence becomes louder than words. Your withdrawal forces others to chase you, to fear losing you, to bend toward you. This is the paradox. By letting go, you make yourself unforgettable. So let me ask you, what do you still cling to? Is it your wealth, polished like a fragile idol? Is it your reputation, defended like a brittle glass mask? Is it approval, begged for like scraps at a table? What would happen if you let go? If you detached completely, would you collapse? Or would you finally stand sovereign and free? Because until you can lose everything without trembling, you are still owned. Here is the climax. Money itself is not power. Detachment from money is power. Because the man who can lose without breaking is the man who can never be broken. The man who can walk away holds more control than the man who begs to stay. The man who owns everything but depends on nothing is the man fortune bows to. That is why Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold, not because they are reckless, but because they do not cling. They act, they risk, they endure. And in their detachment, they are crowned untouchable. But detachment, as powerful as it is not the end. Detachment is the crown. Sovereignty is the throne. In Part 5, we will bring everything together: fearlessness, wealth, confrontation, detachment, woven into a single ruthless philosophy of sovereignty. And we'll face the final question: was Machiavelli too ruthless, or was he simply the only one honest enough to tell us the truth? Wealth is power, but only when wielded without attachment. Detachment is not coldness, it is sovereignty. The man who clings can be bought, bribed, broken. The man who detaches cannot be touched. So here is your fourth challenge: let go. Release the chain you thought you couldn't live without. Because the day you stop clinging is the day you become untouchable. And in Part 5, we will step into the throne room of sovereignty, where freedom, power, and Machiavellian clarity converge into the code of the ruthless. Part 5. Sovereignty, the throne of the ruthless. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Niccolo Machiavelli. We've walked through every stage of the ruthless path. We saw how fear chains men, how safety enslaves them, how confrontation forges them, and how detachment crowns them. Now we stand at the end of the journey, the throne of sovereignty. Because all of it means nothing if you don't seize the final step, to rule yourself so completely that no one else can. Sovereignty is not about ruling nations, it is about ruling yourself. It is about reaching a state where no fear dictates your choices, no vanity controls your identity, no bribe can buy your loyalty, no loss can break your spirit. The sovereign man is not reckless. He is not cruel for cruelty's sake. He is clear, decisive, and utterly free. And because he cannot be moved, the world moves around him. Think of the figures history never forgot. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by chaos, yet unshaken. He ruled his empire, but more importantly, he ruled himself. Joan of Arc, mocked, betrayed, condemned, yet she walked into fire without trembling. Her sovereignty was greater than the power of kings. Socrates, forced to drink poison, he smiled. His detachment from life itself turned death into immortality. Julius Caesar, loved, hated, feared, but sovereign in ambition, willing to risk all for destiny. What they had in common wasn't wealth alone, or armies, or luck. It was sovereignty, the ruthless ability to act without chains. I remember the moment I first felt sovereign. It wasn't when I made my first big amount of money. It wasn't when I won an argument or crushed a rival. It was when I said no, calmly, without apology, without fear. No to manipulation, no to approval hunting, no to the chains I had once clung to. In that silence, I realized I was free. Not because the world gave me permission, not because fortune smiled on me, but because I no longer needed anything from anyone. That was sovereignty's first taste. Let me give you the ruthless code, the spine of this entire philosophy. Silence is strength. Speak less. Observe more. Wealth is leverage. Acquire so much that dependence dies. Confrontation is the forge. Step into fire until loss no longer terrifies you. Detachment is the crown. Own everything, cling to nothing. Absence is power. Walk away and make them fear losing you. Sovereignty is the throne. Rule yourself completely, and no one else can rule you. This is not comfort. This is not morality. This is clarity. Here's the part that most people will reject. Sovereignty is lonely. You will be misunderstood. You will be hated. You will be painted as arrogant, cold, even cruel. But this is the test. Can you endure being the villain in someone else's story if it means you remain free in your own? Because the sovereign does not live for applause. He does not beg to be loved. He does not kneel to be accepted. He walks alone if he must. And because of that, he is never truly alone. So let me ask you one last time. Would you rather be loved as a pawn or feared as a sovereign? Would you rather be safe and small or unforgettable and untouchable? Would you rather die chained or live crowned. Most will choose comfort. Most will bow. Most will never rise. But a rare few, those ruthless enough, those fearless enough, will cut the chains. Machiavelli was hated in his time. He was called cruel, manipulative, heartless. But centuries later, his name still commands fear, still inspires respect, still provokes thought. Why? Because he told the truth, that men are ruled not by ideals, but by fear, wealth, and survival. That to be free, you must master what others deny. That to be sovereign, you must first be ruthless. So here is your final challenge. Cut one leash this week. Refuse an explanation. Walk away from approval. Risk rejection. Release the chain you cling to most.
And then notice how the world shifts. Notice how people react differently. Notice the silence that follows, because they will feel it. You are no longer theirs. You are sovereign. If you've made it this far, you are not like most. You are part of the rare few willing to face uncomfortable truths. So drop your take below. Was Machiavelli too ruthless, or was he the only one honest enough to tell us the truth? If this resonated, hit subscribe. Join the community of minds that don't want fairy tales, only clarity. Because here, we don't preach illusions. We sharpen blades, we cut chains, we forge sovereigns. And remember this, they can mock you, they can hate you, they can exile you, they can even kill you. But the sovereign cannot be owned, and that is why the sovereign is unforgettable.